We're going to turn to Iain now.
From my own personal experience with cultural boycotts, I'll break down exactly how I got involved with the boycott, divestment, sanctions movement and became involved with the Palestinian Academic Cultural Boycott Institution. In that interaction and in the situation that took place last year in KZN that I was involved in, the action highlighted 2 points for me that I think speak to the idea that cultural boycotts are, in fact, effective. 2 degrees, very effective in some ways, in other ways maybe not so effective, but I think the topic for me, are cultural boycotts effective, is very broad. You will always find a way that they could be effective, you know, to certain people. So for me, as an artist, I was meant to perform at a theatre arts festival that takes place in my home province, KZN. And it's a festival I've always participated in. It has always been very supportive of me as an artist. It's always given artists in KZN a new platform to work on. And yeah, it's quite a, you know, a personal sort of a festival to all of us artists there. And so it was a big decision for me to do it. And up until, literally the story was, I had been booked personally in my personal capacity as an artist to perform at this festival. And up until the very night before my first performance, when I was going up to the festival to conduct my technical rehearsal, up until that point, I had, upon finding out that the festival was and had been approached by various solidarity and activist groups to disinvest or divest from accepting Israeli participation in the festival declining and moving forward regardless, I had decided to use my performances up until that point to speak about the occupation, to speak about the situation in Israel, to actually work within the festival to raise awareness about the reasons that this festival should be divesting, and other festivals and other similar institutions, the National Art Festival included. And up until that point, that's what I planned to do, but I received an email on my very smartphone, which was very irritating at the time because it was a very good email to get. I got an email directly from South Africa's BDS, Boycott, Divestment and Sanctions Steering Committee, that pointed out and highlighted various very simple and obvious points about the nature of the relationship between any institution and the Israeli government and its complicity in breaking the line or crossing the line in terms of the boycotts. And at that point, I decided that I could no longer go forward, and I canceled my performances, and the rest is my BDS history. But that interaction highlighted 2 very important points for me. One, the manner in which a boycott is conducted, and as Mike has already touched on, the boycott, divestment, sanctions movement, a boycott can be and is a very precise, targeted means of resisting oppression in this case. And 2, it also highlighted the origin of this boycott, divestment, and sanctions movement. And the fact, I also like to bring up the points, we do get a lot of criticism or fingers pointed in terms of why one and not the other, why single this one out. And I think gentlemen are going to get into that a little bit later. But my interaction was, I got an email from within Palestine. I got a direct personal call from Palestinian artists, Palestinian academics, people who were on the ground inside Palestine experiencing the oppression that we were resisting. It was a personal call. It was not I didn't wake up one morning, decide that I didn't like injustice to the point where I was going to pick a cause and this was going to be it. I was actually, literally, it was like someone coming up to me and going, hey, please help me right now. And it basically pointed out to me that this boycott, divestment, sanction, and the idea of a cultural boycott is effective, very effective, in letting the people on the ground who are suffering know that there is a voice and a solidarity movement that is out there that recognizes their position. So 2 things. One, that, and also the other thing was the way and the manner, the process that they got hold of me, the manners that they went through, the very specific, almost legal jargon that was used to describe the nature of a relationship between the Israeli government and a complicit arts organization like the festival, showed me that it was being conducted in a very precise, thought out, logical manner. It was very, very specific. It wasn't broad. It wasn't painting everyone with the same brush. It wasn't crass in any way. It was very, very smooth, smart, thought out, something that I could relate to straight away. And so that's my own personal feelings on boycotts. Yes, I do feel that they are very effective. And just a few additional notes before. I don't think I'm going to carry on too much longer. We want to get into what other gentlemen have to say here. But I work as a Dennis Brutus scholar at the Centre for Civil Society and UKZN, and I have taken my lead in terms of my participation in boycott, divestment, and sanctions from Dennis Brutus and his work as the leading the sports boycotts during the years of apartheid in South Africa. And a few quotes, or a quote from Dennis: "There are times you have to demarcate the area of struggle where you have to almost allow your enemy to define the parameters and then fight within those parameters, and that is exactly what boycotts do. They recognize, for example, and I'm going to use Israel as an example, they recognize the fact that Israel uses culture as a weapon of the oppression. They recognize the fact that Israel uses economics as a weapon of oppression. And the cultural boycott addresses that imbalance, or uses then the same weapons, culture and economics, as a form of resistance, as a form of defense. And boycott, divestment, sanctions, again, I think its strongest and most effective use is that it puts the power back into the hands of a disenfranchised, disempowered people. We know very much that the situation in Israel is one of incredible imbalance in terms of politics, economy, military, basically every facet of a society that makes up a society, or a certain society around a certain people, is very, very imbalanced or unbalanced in Israel at the moment. And that imbalance is addressed by boycott, divestment, and sanctions. It basically puts the power back into the hands of the civil society of Palestine, the Palestinian civil society, and gives them a means to address the politics and the economics and the cultural attacks that they are under, using the same non-violent, passive resistance methods that have become practiced, as part of the boycott, divestment, sanctions movement. So for me, amongst a variety of other things, also knowing that there are, young Palestinian rappers who I've actually met and I've interacted with that are on the ground there, that listen and watch for all the sort of moves that boycott, divestment, sanctions makes, in the hopes that one day, it will help. I don't think BDS or boycotts are going to end anything tomorrow. I don't think boycotts are going to just suddenly end the occupation tomorrow. I think they are part of a very large, thought out strategy, just as they were in South Africa. People talk about there being 4 pillars to the resistance in South Africa. There was internal resistance, there was violent resistance, but part of it was the international pressure that was brought to bear on the South African government that contributed once again to the internal resistance that already existed. That is the point of a cultural boycott coming from outside. The call has come from within, we've responded from outside, and they are using that support and that strength and that solidarity to strengthen their internal resistance, because the true change we know is only going to come from within, and that's essentially what boycotts and how they are effective for me.
Okay, Robert.